Attendees are flooding in. Just for the record, we've gone ahead and started the webinar recording. Though the commission meeting hasn't been called to order yet, we're waiting on a fourth commissioner so that we have quorum. Here they are. Welcome, Commissioner Brosnan. Okay, now we have a quorum, and now we can begin our meeting. Whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Welcome to the March 23rd, 2022 meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission. This is a teleconference meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely. I'd like to introduce staff and commission members present. Commissioners present include Commissioner Brosnan, Commissioner Diepenbrock, Commissioner Joshua, and Commissioner Thomas. And staff present includes Library and Community Services Director Sean Reinhardt, Assistant Library Services Director Nick Segda, Acting Assistant Community Service Director Rondell Howard. Assistant Director Segda is also the staff liaison for the commission. Nick, will you please take a moment and provide instructions to the commission and members of the public in attendance on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair Thomas. For commissioners, we ask that you keep your camera on at all times when possible and your microphones off until you're recognized by the chair. For members of the public, the chair will call for public comment at various times throughout the meeting. If at any point when public comment is called for, you wish to make a public comment, use that Zoom raise hand function down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or if you're dialing in and participating in the meeting, press *9 to virtually raise your hand. Then I'll unmute you and allow you to address the commission. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per commenter per item. Back to you, Chair Thomas.
Awesome. Under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Nick, do we have any public comments?
At this point, if anyone would like to make a comment on an item not listed on the agenda, please use that raise hand function on your Zoom screen or press *9 now. And seeing none, back to you, Chair Thomas.
All right, we can move to presentations. The first presentation today is from the Youth Advisory Committee. Assistant Director Shegda, I'll let you take over.
Nick, I think you're muted right now.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you for sharing your screen, Sean. I appreciate that. Joining us tonight, we're happy to have Natalie Tantistra. She's the Secretary of the Youth Advisory Committee, and she's here to talk a little bit about their recent activities and some upcoming activities. Sean, if you could go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to give the commission a little bit of background on the Youth Advisory Committee because I don't know that all of the commissioners currently serving were around when the committee was formed. It was created by City Council's action in December of 2019. YAC members are high school students who either attend high school in Menlo Park or are residents of Menlo Park. And the function of YAC is as an advisory group to the Parks and Recreation Commission. So they staff and the commission may take things to the YAC for their input. And the YAC also has activities, events, and programs to sort of involve youth in parks and recreation matters in Menlo Park. There's currently 14 teens serving on the YAC. And with that, I'll turn it over to Natalie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie. So right now I'm going to talk a little bit about our past projects. So last year, we did some Mental Health Awareness Month activities and a virtual open mic. During the Mental Health Awareness Month, we created a calendar where we had like a set of challenges every day that teens who felt like participating would do each day in order to feel like they were more calm and to promote mental health resources. Other things we've been doing are arts and craft projects that were able to be picked up at the library. So that was really fun. And then recently, we also had a Black History Month film discussion facilitated by Dr. Mary Bacon, where we watched Hidden Figures or we read Hidden Figures. And we were able to have a very constructive conversation surrounding race and how it was presented in these mediums. Some of the difficulties we've been going through is that we were created while it was in COVID. So we've been very limited to mostly online activities. And also there's also been a lot of staff turnover for YAC. So that's another thing we've been working through together. Next slide. So projects that we're currently planning involve the Arbor Day tree planting. So that's on Saturday in April. And so that's where we will help plant the trees for Arbor Day. And I know there are a couple of Youth Advisory Committee people going. And we're also working really hard on our Earth Day park cleanup at Bedwall Bayfront Park. So last Saturday, we went to go like scout out the park and to see where all the trash was. And so one of our main goals is to get teens to work to help our environment in our community. And so that will be Saturday, April 23rd from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And although we aren't able to have Grassroots Ecology help us directly with the event, they will be helping help us figure out the details towards it. And we're hoping that we can get participation from local high schools and people who need community service hours. And we're also looking forward to planning our first in-person meeting, given that I haven't met most of my peers in person. So that's all. Thank you so much for your time.
Wow. So impressed. That's a lot of activities, especially given that COVID's been going on. I guess one question I have is, how, Natalie, did you find out about the YAC? And like, how many high schools would you say are represented in the YAC?
So I found out from an email that my mom found on the newsletter, and she encouraged me to apply. So that's what I did, and here I am. And I would say there are maybe 4 high schools represented. They're all over, but they're all Menlo Park residents. So it's still interesting to hear all of their perspectives.
Yeah, I'd say there's probably, well, let's see. I think the predominant number of teens on the YAC are from Menlo Atherton High School, but there are also, I think Judge goes to the Arts and Tech Magnet High School in the Belhaven neighborhood. And I think we have like a Menlo School participant and maybe Sacred Heart. Is that, I'm not sure if that's right or not.
There's one more, but I forgot the name. Sorry. There is another high school though. It's a private school. That's what I know.
Well, awesome. Would any other commissioners like to make a comment or ask a question? Commissioner Joshua.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if my hand's going up or not. Natalie, how do you reach out to fellow students or fellow high schools in terms of trying to recruit more members for YAC?
In the past, I've talked to a couple teachers and they were able to send out emails to their students. We also might contact the administration and ask them to put our information into their newsletters. And some other people have been using social media and just by ways of texting and email.
Do you get good reaction when you use these mediums?
It's been mixed. I would say we've, in the past recruiting session, we've gotten a couple, maybe 3 or 4 people to join the YAC. So I would say it's pretty good given that how many students we've reached, because we have big schools and our nets only reach so far.
One other thing I would maybe suggest there's so many students that use the parks and recreational facilities in terms of teams that participate using this is simply Menlo Park recreation facilities. That may be another route to go. Because you have coaches, you've got active players, and I'm sure that's also a good way to recruit. And I'm sure you also get good reaction from students that are participating, using the facility to also help us with the upkeep. You know, the work that you're doing right now, just cleaning up the parks. That's something that I would expect anyone that's using it, the youth that's using it, also to participate in. So that's just something that I'd encourage you to also look at doing.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you.
Well, Natalie, thank you so much. Oh, Commissioner Brosnan.
Natalie, I just wanted to thank you for presenting. That was a really great presentation. And I love seeing that the mental health awareness is on the minds of the youth of Menlo Park. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Natalie, thank you for checking in. It's really inspiring to see your progress. And we'll go ahead and move on to D2 now. So we have a staff presentation on reservation management platform implementation. Assistant Director Nick, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chair Thomas. And thank you, Sean, for driving the presentation. Tonight, we'd like to talk to you, the Commission, a little bit about the reservation management platform. Go ahead and give us the next slide. Thank you. So just a little bit of background. In 2016, the City Council approved the Information and Technology Master Plan, most colloquially known as the IT Master Plan. And the IT Master Plan went through and took a look at all of the city's IT infrastructure, but also all of the software components that the city was using at the time. And they took a look at the software that we were and currently are using for recreation registration called eGov by a company called Munition, and saw that it was not optimal and recommended that it be replaced. The eGov software has been around for a while. I think it was custom built for the city of Menlo Park in the early 2010s. So it's at least 10 years old now and has had minor tweaks, but no real major upgrades in that time. The city sort of responding to that IT master plan recommendation, and also from the evaluations and comments of staff and users, went about trying to find a new platform. And most recently, the City Council authorized the implementation of a new platform called Perfect Mind, is the name of the software, at their March 8th meeting. I'll talk a little bit more about how we picked Perfect Mind later on in the presentation. Just a quick note that we recognize that this web and phone interface, that not everyone's comfortable with getting access to reservations and facilities that way. We still take a fair number of bookings by phone, or people signing up for classes and facilities on paper, in person. We'll continue to do those things as well. Next slide, Sean, please. So what is just a little bit more about what we use the platform for, and what the public uses it for, and what the staff uses it for. It's the forward-facing software that lets the public find and sign up for classes, events, childcare, picnic areas, tennis courts, fields, reserving rooms. Ideally, users would be able to submit any kind of application forms or upload documentation forms, things like proof of insurance for renting facilities, and also allow the public to pay fees and manage their account profiles. The staff use it to take in those payments and process them, to manage all the different registrations and scheduling and reservations, to track the data on all those reservations and schedulings, to maintain user accounts, and to integrate with the finance and the IT systems of the city. Next slide, please. So a few things that we wanted to think about, and things that we think Perfect Mind does a really good job at, is to have a very intuitive interface that's easy to use and that works on phones, laptops, computers. The ability for users to update their profiles and to link different family members to the same account, because that's how people use their accounts. The ability to notify users by text or email. A really good module for field and class reservations. A dedicated childcare module, which is not something we have with our current eGov system. Sports league management. We're using another piece of software to manage the sport leagues. The ability for folks to pay for drop-in classes and things like open gym hours. And then on the back end, something that's really flexible and good at doing reporting and analysis. It's okay. I don't know if that was a suggestion, Sean, or if you decided to.
Sorry.
No
Error
worries.
to mouse click, sorry.
So and some of the other cities nearby that use Perfect Mind include City of Oakland, City of Walnut Creek, Sausalito, Santa Rosa, Saratoga, and Los Gatos. So how did we go about choosing Perfect Mind? Well, I told you about that IT master plan recommendation a few years back. We put together a city team with staff from LCS, IT finance, and the city manager's office. We kind of polled our peers and asked them what they were using, if they had done a recent analysis, and how satisfied they were with the solution they received. On the basis of those evaluations, we got 6 responses to a request for quotes. Those respondents made a presentation to our team, which included folks from different areas of the LCS. We then had 4 vendors back for a second round of sort of more in-depth demos and questioning. And through that process, we picked Perfect Mind because of their ease of use, how flexible their platform is. The reviews that we got from folks who use their platform, and they have a nice predictable flat fee pricing model, which is something that we really appreciated. Council approved that Perfect Mind selection on March 8th. So kind of timeline of where we've been and where we're going. We reviewed and selected Perfect Mind, Council approved it. We're in the process of executing the contract right now, hope to be done by the end of this week, as a matter of fact. Looking at implementing through the rest of the spring and into summer. That would be migrating the data, setting up the systems and entering all the facilities and programs, launching that childcare module, training our staff on how to use it, and integrating it with the city systems, hoping to launch sometime in summer before fall registration comes in. We are keeping the eGov system in parallel for the rest of the calendar year, just to make sure that we don't have to rush that implementation of Perfect Mind. And at that point, I'm happy to answer any clarifying questions you guys have, or take public comment on this item.
Commissioner Joshua, did you raise a hand?
Yes, I did. I had my hand was up all the time. Now I put it down. So I put it back up again. So you mentioned that sports league is not covered by Perfect Mind. Was that correct?
No, sports leagues are not covered by eGov. And what we had to do was get another little piece of software or a smaller software just to do the sports leagues. So sports leagues track, teams, players, tournaments, one-loss records, rankings, those kinds of things. And eGov doesn't do that. So we have a little, it's not even an add-on, it's like a go-along piece of software that we use now for tracking the sports leagues. Perfect Mind will do that inside of Perfect Mind. So we won't have to have that separate one.
Thank you.
Nick, I have a question about the staff overhead to support more conventional, I guess, registration workflows, whether it's by phone or other means. Is this something that like existing staff at the different facilities can do, or is there any extra investment that's needed to still support those?
I'll start to answer it, and if Rondell, if you see any holes in my answer or have anything to add, let me know. Most of the staff who are sort of the point of contact, the front desk staff at the various facilities, will do that kind of work, helping people register for classes, taking phone calls, and taking reservations over the phone as part of their normal workflow. It's kind of built into their normal workflow. So that will continue with Perfect Mind. It's just hope that the ease of use of Perfect Mind will be such that that part will be easier, even more easier for folks. I think a lot of folks with during the COVID shutdown, where a lot of things had to be done online, got more familiar with doing things online. Probably there wasn't a lot more eGov registration because our facilities weren't open for a lot of the time we were shut down. But I think in general, people got more comfortable with doing things online. I suspect we will still have a fair number of people who, for whatever reason, prefer or need to come in and do that stuff in person. And so we will continue to provide that service.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. But for our front desk users, I think this gives us an additional hand. It makes it more user friendly. We've ran into a lot of difficulty at times, and like Nick said, during the pandemic, where we would have a bunch of duplicates and just things were just offset because of the pandemic. And so it's not as user friendly for eGov when it comes to handling it offsite and logging in. And so Perfect Minds just kind of sets that up to give all the front desk users a better tool to kind of use and easier to guide parents or individuals that are not tech savvy. It makes it real simple when it comes to just enrollment, rentals, and just navigating what we offer through LCS. And so I think it's able to combine the library as well now that we've been integrated into one. And so it's just more user friendly, and it gives us more options to kind of deal with. And they're more responsive too. And so I believe like if things come up, we'll be able to kind of like integrate and roll out new features if by working with Perfect Mind as well.
Yeah, that was an issue with eGov, who were, they could be very responsive, but because it was a custom built piece of software, there weren't like sort of normal upgrades or updates that were, or new features rolled out. Basically, if we wanted a new feature, they would have to code it for us. A company like Perfect Mind is a larger company that's working with rec centers across the country and in Canada, where they're based as well. And they roll out new features pretty regularly. So we would just get those new features if we wanted them as part of the normal subscription that we pay. The other thing is, we talk about some of the limitations of eGov. eGov doesn't, it won't work with the Safari browser, for instance. So something that's pretty basic. A lot of people use the Safari browser on Apple-based products. eGov doesn't work with the Safari browser. So something basic like that.
And I meant to I also add too, it's like you said too, it's childcare friendly for our childcare programs. eGov was really, really, I don't want to say it was bad, but it was kind of difficult to keep a lot of things. We run into situations with parents and kids where there may be something going on with the household and one person pays this amount, this other person, but I think Perfect Minds gives us that opportunity to kind of input that data a bit easier. And it also helps with keeping count of how many students are in class. We had a lot of difficulty in the childcare sector with eGov trying to keep up with licensing and all our state protocols that we would run across. So Perfect Mind, it definitely helps out with that and assists on that level as well.
Well, this sounds great. It sounds like there is a myriad of reasons to make this switch. And I'm excited to see kind of the new UI and user experience. Nick, do we have any public comment on this item?
I remember to unmute myself, barely in time. At this moment, if any member of the public would like to make a comment on this item, D2, the registration management software presentation, please engage that raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or if you're dialing in, press *9 now. And seeing no comment, back to you, Chair Thomas.
Okay, are there any more commissioner questions or comments on this business item? Seeing none, I think we can move to our regular business. And the first item there is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. I guess we can start off and see if there's any public comment on this item.
Sure. If any member of the public would like to comment on item E1, the approval of the minutes from the February 23rd, 2022 Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, please use that raise hand function at the bottom of the Zoom screen or press *9 now. And seeing none.
Okay, yeah, this is a particular, like the previous minutes, I think are particularly large this week because of the graphic rich presentations. But to kick this off, I would like to motion for the approval of these minutes. Are there any commissioners that would like to second that?
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
So we can pick a second from either, all three of them indicated in one way. Why don't we'll pick Commissioner Brosnan, who raised her hand for a second. So we'll take her as the second.
Okay, Nick, are you going to tally the votes?
I will call for a roll call vote. Motion made by Chair Thomas and seconded by Commissioner Brosnan to approve the minutes from the February 23rd, 2022 Parks and Rec Commission meeting. Commissioner Joshua, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Diepenbrock, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Brosnan, how do you vote?
I'll vote yes.
And Chair Thomas, how do you vote?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, and the second business item on the agenda, Commissioner Brosnan, did you want to make a comment? I see your hand up.
No, sorry, I just forgot to take that down, Commissioner Thomas.
No worries, I've done that too. So the next item, E2 Parks and Recreation Commission work plan update. We didn't make any progress on this month when we were kind of focusing on the park tours, but we will get this done before next meeting. So at this point, we can go ahead and move to informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the Parks and Recreation Commission in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items, however. A commissioner, city staff member, or member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. The first informational item this week is the Menlo Park Community Campus Draft Operation Plan milestones. And Director Reinhardt can take over.
Thank you, Chair Thomas. So the commission does have that informational report. It's being transmitted to the commission. Just to relay the information to you, there will be a more of a discussion of this topic at the April and May meetings of the commission. So this is really just to kind of give you the information in advance of that. So the Library Commission also received this information at their meeting earlier this week, and the City Council is tentatively scheduled to receive this report April 12th, and then the City Council will have a discussion May 10th. So happy to answer any clarifying questions you may have, but primarily we're just transmitting the information at this point.
Assistant Director Shegda, do we have any public comment on this informational item?
Thank you, Chair Thomas. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on item F1, the Menlo Park Community Campus Draft Operation Plan, please use that raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or press *9 if you are a dial-in listener now. And seeing no comment, back to you, Chair Thomas.
Yeah, so I guess one comment is, so there's this City Council subcommittee to focus on the MPCC, which is great. This is a big deal for the city, but I guess I've always been kind of curious how the scope should be partitioned amongst the subcommittee, the Parks and Rec Commission, and the Library Commission. I guess that'd be my first question. And then my second question, which is more of a comment, is that at least during the time I've been on this commission, it feels like there's maybe been a little disconnect between things we've focused on and our meetings and the City Council. So perhaps this is an opportunity for myself to, I guess, take more responsibility. But moving forward, and especially since now there's also this subcommittee on the commission, it seems like we should make more of an effort to stay in sync with City Council. I'd be curious to get staff's perspective on this.
Happy to, and I think we'll dive into that, I think, in the April meeting when this is kind of calendared for like a regular business kind of discussion. But I would note that in the informational report, there are a number of kind of policy updates and sort of operational plan elements, like the staffing and the programming of different areas of the facility, all of which, well, especially the ones relevant to the recreation components, would certainly be reviewed by the commission comment and feedback. And you know, the city council subcommittee and the full city council also, you know, looking at those things. I think there are multiple stakeholders, you know, in this project, and in particular, the longtime residents of the Belhaven neighborhood who, you know, really were sort of the driving voices and vision for the new facility. So, you know, ensuring that all stakeholders, you know, are part of the process and have this kind of this roadmap, if you will, that's in this informational report of here are all the different elements and the milestones, so that all of those stakeholders can kind of see, oh, here's how we can kind of see ourselves weighing in and plugging in. So, and I'll just kind of close this comment by noting that the Parks and Recreation Commission has actually in recent months begun, you know, reviewing some of the policies for, you know, like Parks and Recreation, you know, and that is kind of starting to set the stage for doing another update of those policies for the MPCC project. So more to come on that, more discussion about that next month, and certainly at the City Council on May 10th. So I hope that's helpful, just kind of as a starter. And it's just a really exciting, very, very large, once in a lifetime project. So great to be working together with everyone on it.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a big item, and we would love to be involved and love to have more interaction with the city council. The next, or I'll open this up to other commissioners. Would anyone else like to make a comment on this item, or should we wait until the future meeting? Okay, seeing none, we can move to F2, department updates.
Yes, I'll give a few updates, and Nick, Rondell, if I missed anything key, please do feel free to jump in. So I do have a few. One is that, as you know, most of our facilities have been open to the public now for several months. Our staff has done a phenomenal job, you know, safely reactivating most of the programs and working together on site and with some virtual programs and activities still going on. But we're really excited that we are bringing back our annual staff retreat, something that we did each year before the pandemic and have not done for 2 years. So just as kind of one of those things that's coming back, which is good news for us, is we are planning a department retreat next month after a 2-year hiatus. So we're really looking forward to that. Also, we had the opportunity citywide to recognize employees for their good work in 2021, having a city employee recognition luncheon, and several library and community services staff were honored at that employee recognition lunch for their accomplishments in 2021, including our department employees of the year, who I just like to acknowledge really quickly, Irela Tinahero, who is the senior center coordinator. She was honored by her peers as employee of the year, as well. Winnie Ng, the library assistant, also honored by her peers as employee of the year for her work in the library administration division. There were also a few special awards. A special accomplishments award citywide was given to Polly Jensen, who is a library assistant who transitioned and is now a child care teacher's aide at the Menlo Children's Center. And she's doing a phenomenal job there, and her peers recognized her for special accomplishments for transitioning over to child care and doing such a great job with it. And also the 2021 Customer Service Award for the city was awarded to our Belhaven Youth Center coordinator, Myra Mormley. So just wanted to let the commission know that the staff at Library and Community Services are doing great work, and their peers throughout the city. You're recognizing them, and we couldn't be prouder of them. Also want to give special thanks to Natalia Jones, who is a recreation supervisor who actually organized the city employee recognition event. Another just update is on some staffing changes. So you may be aware, but if not, we'll let you know that a recreation supervisor past 10 years, Todd Zao, did retire. last month. We're very happy for him. He's moving on to exciting new things. And so we are in the process of posting a recruitment to replace him to fill that position, library and community services supervisor. So that should be posted within the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, Rondell, who was Todd's supervisor, is kind of taking on direct supervision of the sports and recreation side of the house until that supervisor's filled. We just closed the application period for recreation coordinator. We actually have 3 recreation coordinators that we'll be hiring for our senior center, our recreation center, and for some support out in the fields, playgrounds, sports, things of that nature. We're very excited about that, great for the candidates, and we actually have a number of interviews tomorrow. So those are a couple of things that are happening on the recruitment side. I also wanted to give an update on Nealon Park, and specifically the piece of adaptive equipment, the zip line, which had been offline for some time, and now we've kind of resumed efforts to see what we can do to get that back online. So I just want to report that we did meet with the manufacturer about a week or 2 ago out there at the park, and discussed some ideas to sort of mitigate the overnight kind of noise issue that was kind of causing some concerns and complaints, frankly, from some of the neighboring residents. So the manufacturer and their engineers are out working on some solutions, and we anticipate receiving some options there from them in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be sure to report back to the commission on that. Our goal is to get that piece of equipment back online, but there will be some modifications needed in order for it to mitigate the noise issue, which is pretty substantial. So that's a few items. I think I covered kind of the main things. I don't know if Nick or Rondell, was there anything else on the department updates front? So I think I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
I mean, before we open this up to commissioners, I know some members of the public are very interested in the zip line at Nealon Park. So Nick, do we have any public comment on those updates?
Thank you, Chair Thomas. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on item F2, the department updates, please use that raise hand function on your Zoom screen now, or press *9 on your phone if you are dialing in. And seeing no comments, back to you, Chair Thomas.
Okay, thank you for all those updates. A couple comments from me. In terms of the annual awards, would it be possible to include those in the minutes? Just so we have reference, and that if commissioners are going to any of these facilities, we can show our appreciation. So if it's not, like, for example, on the website already, it'd be great to have these individuals recognized in our minutes. We'll definitely miss Todd Zio. I feel like he was at the last meeting or the meeting before that, but exciting for him. For recruiting, I guess that sounds great. It sounds like there's a lot going on there. And for the zip line at Nealon Park, really glad to hear that there's progress on this. I think there are public comments in the recent past where members of the public expressed a lot of interest in this and getting that back online. So thank you for following up on that. Are there any other commissioner comments on this item? Seeing none, we can move to commissioner reports. And I'm particularly excited for the first commissioner.
To the chair, I believe there's the tentative agenda calendar also remaining in information items.
Thank you, Director Reinhardt. So the final informational item is the Parks and Recreation Commission tentative agenda and calendar. Would you like to share that, Nick?
Sean's got it.
So one update to this calendar that I'd like to share with the commission is we have received, and I'll relay some information from Vice Chair Baskin, who was not able to attend today, but she had alerted staff that she'd been receiving some inquiries from Menlo Park residents about the Realized Flood Park project. As you know, Flood Park is owned and operated by the County of San Mateo Parks Department. And there is a large project to kind of renovate that park and potentially implement new sports fields and some other things. And they're undergoing a whole process for that. And she'd gotten a number of inquiries about that. The commission may recall that the county parks staff, the director of county parks, Nicholas Calderon, came to this commission in October of 2020 and gave a presentation on the Flood Park renovation project at that time. Now that was quite some time ago. So in light of the fact that the county is now back out there kind of seeking community input on the flood park renovations and the inquiries from residents about it, we've arranged for Mr. Calderon to come to the Parks and Recreation Commission next month on April 27th to present an update on the Realized Flood Park project. And so the commission has another opportunity to weigh in. So that's not reflected here, but we would add that to the agenda.
Of which month that is, that Sean?
Next month, April 27th.
Okay. Didn't we say in January that we were going to put pickleball in the spring, like April or May?
We tentatively place it in April or May, but at this point in time, we don't think we have the capacity to do more with pickleball until the Willow Oaks Park project is underway. And the Willow Oaks Park project, you may recall, I think it was presented last month, contemplates implementing pickleball courts in that location. So we'd like to let that process play out and then revisit the topic of pickleball.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, just if I might, Sean, I think the Willow Oaks Park design concept is going before the city council in April. It's tentatively scheduled, I think, in the middle of April. We'll have to watch that because it slides, those things slide sometime, but I'll be sure to give the commission a heads up if I see it pop up on a city council agenda.
Before asking further questions, Nick, are there any public comments on this item?
If any member of the public would like to comment on item F3, the Parks and Recreation tentative agenda calendar, please use that raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen or press *9 on your phone now. Seeing none, it also looks like we might have lost Commissioner Brosnan, some sort of computer mishap.
So with that, the commission falls short of a quorum. So we will give Commissioner Brosnan the opportunity to try to reconnect before proceeding. I know that Commissioner Brosnan was having technical difficulties before the beginning of the meeting, which is why we started a little late. So she was able to reconnect then. So
I'm going to try resending her the invite link for the meeting and see if that can help her get back in.
Fortunately, we're almost through everything. So if we had to cut it short, we can probably move up. Here she is. Awesome. Commissioner Brosnan is back. And Commissioner Joshua, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, the question was with respect to the pickleball at Willow, was there a specific staff recommendation on that? Because there were multiple uses for that particular space that were contemplated.
yeah, so prior to kind of the advent of pickleball in Menlo Park, like a previous iteration of the Willow Oaks park renovation, I think just basically retained like a basketball court in the current location.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of the emerging popularity of pickleball and a desire expressed by a number of residents to have more locations to play and also more central locations to play, that basketball court, which is fairly underutilized, was one of the options was to have purpose-built pickleball courts either in place of the basketball court or maybe in tandem. Looks like there's enough room maybe for both. And so that's part of sort of the design deliberations at this point in time and options. And as Dick mentioned, for the city council to consider, I believe, next month.
Is there a specific staff recommendation on that?
Well, staff's recommendation is a few things. One is we do know that there is a significant demand for pickleball. So identifying opportunities, especially with like kind of projects that are already in the pipeline, to have purpose-built pickleball courts is a positive. So if we could find opportunities, then that's something we recommend be done. The basketball court at Willow Oaks is rather underutilized. So in that regard, we recommend looking at how can we maximize the use of that particular location in the project. And so, in combination, staff's recommendation would be to, if it's feasible, and if it kind of meets with, kind of general consensus approval and certainly the approval of the city council, that purpose-built pickleball court be implemented as part of the Willow Oaks renovation. Whether or not it, exactly what form or how many courts it takes, I think is something to be determined. But it does seem like a good opportunity to implement a purpose-built pickleball court relatively soon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think now we can move on to commissioner reports. And I'm really excited to hear Commissioner Diepenbrock and Assistant Director Shegda tell us about their parks tour.
Sure. So I'll just set the stage a little bit. Commissioners Diepenbrock and Bryman joined Rondell and myself and our Public Works Parks Supervisor Bill Halleck on a tour of Sharon and Stanford Hills Park last week. And you can go ahead and show the next slide, Sean. I just put together a few slides of pictures and things to sort of help orient the commissioners a little bit. Commissioner Bryman, chime in whenever, but this is just a screenshot map showing you where Sharon Park is. Sand Hill Road is at the bottom of the screen. And so those are all the venture capital firms along Sand Hill Road. That's the other green there is Sharon Heights Golf and Country Club. Sort of to the right off the map would be the Safeway and the shopping center there in Sharon Heights. So go ahead, Sean, and then I'll let Commissioner Bryman take over. I just took some notes on this slide of some of the things we talked about.
I think you mean.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Diepenbrock. Pardon me.
That's right. He left me hanging. That's all right. So, I mean, kind of like you said, Nick, really, my main takeaway from the tours was that our parks are in very good hands in Bill's custody. That's for sure. So, lots of passion, lots of knowledge. So that was very good. But yeah, we toured both parks and learned about the fish and kind of the priorities there, and went on a little hike and saw a trail that we didn't know existed there in Sharon Park. So that was very cool. Talked a little bit about where the restroom might go in Sharon Park, and that's, I guess, a ways away, but we did discuss that a little bit. Yeah, it's all newly paved and looks great. They're putting in all new garbage cans that look very nice, and now they're going to replace the tables that are definitely older that need to be replaced. So that's on the list of things getting done. I guess, yeah. And then he said the number one thing on his agenda list was moving, I don't know what you call that thing. Is it the pump or,
Yeah, there's like a pump house that sort of drives the fountain feature. So there's a really nice lake with it's not a lake, it's like a water feature. It's only like 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet deep. But it's really nice and it's nicely landscaped. And there's a really nice paved walking path all the way around it. But there's this pump house that's pretty antiquated there. The maintenance guys have to do some weird gyrations to get down into the pump house, and they need backup because it's so small and cramped. And
yeah,
so that's on the master plan, is to get upgraded and replaced.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely kind of dangerous. But you just learn so much stuff that's done that you have no idea. I mean, this happens to be a park that I frequent quite often, and I didn't know that they basically empty it once a year and clean the whole bottom of it and move all the fish to Burgess, and they have to move the fish back, and just a lot of work done that you're just not aware of. But no question, this park is the jewel of Menlo Park parks. I mean, it's just it's awesome, and there's a lot of benches, memorial benches all around the park that people have donated or dedicated to loved ones. Yeah, so that was great. And then, like Nick said, we visited Stanford Hills Park, basically a park that none of us had ever been to and didn't know existed, and just a beautiful space. I thought Commissioner Bryman had a great idea of maybe a way to attract more people to that park, because it is kind of in a different area of Menlo Park that maybe not a lot of people get to, but maybe trying to add a dog park in a couple different places there, that it seemed like it would be a very easy add, but who knows. And Bill seemed to agree that it was a pretty good idea. Obviously, depending on residents and all that sort of thing, but just a beautiful field, and just didn't know anything about it. And not a lot of parking there, but enough. Yeah, so it was a great visit. And then we saw these benches, these tables here that are concrete that they're not fans of, Bill was saying, because they're just too immobile and too heavy. And so those aren't the picnic tables that we're going to be adding at Sharon Park. Yeah, That's me with my funny hat. Thanks for that, Nick. That's good. But yeah, so that was it. I don't know, Rondell, if there's anything else that I missed that you'd like to add, or Nick, but yeah, it's a great visit.
When you spoke on Sharon Park, I think, like you said, one of the hidden jewels to that park is the hidden trail in the back that nobody really sees. And then when Bill took us down more into the track, I know there was a huge discussion on kind of getting a dog park there, but like you said, Bill is he has so much knowledge of what goes on there, and gave us a real thorough reason of why there wasn't adequate space or why it wasn't adequate enough for a dog park because of the drainage and how it dips down and how it's kind of below. And then here at Sharon Park, not Sharon Park, but at Stanford Hill Park, I think it's like amphitheater style. And so that was kind of one of the suggestions. But again, as mentioned, there are residents around, so it's not sure if that's compatible to be there. But it is a great space for something as music in the park. You would just have to really get to talk to those residents. In that amplified area that it could be, I think there's couple classes that happen there. There's some Zumba, some yoga classes that happen there. There were a few people out there hanging out. I think the parking is definitely would be an issue to get a lot of people out there at once. And then again, speaking on those benches, the benches that's there, they're pretty. I know Bill said he didn't want to have the concrete ones at the other park because they sink into the ground after so much time. So both parks are really great, and they're not that far from each other. I think they're less than a half a mile away, and so they're really near in proximity, and just gorgeous places to be. So Bill is really the guy when it comes to the parks and recs, and like Commissioner Deacon Brock said, he really keeps them well maintenance and of that nature. So it was a great tour. It was good to see it. It was my first time at Stanford Hills, my second time at Sharon Park, but both parks are really, really great.
Yeah, the only thing I might add was Bill talked a lot about sort of converting areas of plantings to native plantings, and planting native species of trees when he has to replace trees. He and his crew will try to replant them with native species that take less water, sort of moving away. I mean, both Sharon Park and Stanford Hills Park have big expanses of grass, which is lovely to have, but there are also areas that don't necessarily need to be big expanses of grass. And so to use native plants in those areas really helps reduce the city's water consumption. See, we have a hand raised in amongst our attendees, Chair Thomas.
Nick, do we have any public comment?
Sure. If anyone would like to make a public comment at this point, please use that raise hand function on your Zoom screen or press *9 now. I see Jennifer Johnson has her hand raised. Jennifer, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and address the commission.
Hi, thank you. I apologize if I missed this, but I thought that there was a presentation attached to the agenda reviewing the proposed playground updates for Burgess and Willow Oaks parks. And I had thought that was going to be discussed at today's meeting. What I will say is that in looking at the plans, I have significant concerns. I see that the company who's been contracted to do the work has identified a number of inclusive elements, but one of the things that I always come back to is that an element is not inclusive if a child cannot get to it. And in both situations, the only thing on the rubberized surface, well, no, in one situation entirely, is the toddler play structure. Whereas if you're trying to allow children of all abilities and their parents, grandparents, to be able to access these pieces of equipment and be able to help kids on and off these pieces of equipment, they need to be on an accessible surface, and wood chips are not an accessible surface. If you can't smoothly roll over it, it's not accessible. And I understand that the rubber surfacing is more expensive, and what the designers did at Nealon Park was carefully arranged the equipment in such a way that the place where you get on and the place where you get off are on the rubber surface, but the entirety of the structure isn't necessarily. And that allowed for far more of the playground elements to be accessible with that careful design. I think that some of the elements that have been proposed are great, but it would be sad to see the city spend a bunch of money to try to make an inclusive playground and not really have it be such. One other thing I wanted to mention, the friendship swing that was listed in both of those. Swings are great, kids love them. But if the goal of that is for them to be accessible to children who have motor disabilities, you might want to consider the ones that have an overhead bar or some kind of feature to secure a child into it. I know my child and several others have a real difficult time sitting in something like that without sliding. So those are my primary comments.
Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. It's really great to have your feedback recently. And I believe you were a former commissioner, and we have an opening and would love to have you apply for the upcoming year. In terms of the Willow Oaks and Burgess, I should call them like children's areas, that was actually covered in the last meeting, and I believe is only in this packet for the minutes. But unfortunately, that was covered last time. I hear what you're saying. At Nealon, it is really accessible, and having the I guess rubberized turf all around it does make it a lot easier as a parent to bring a child or extract a child from the play structure. So we will keep that in mind moving forward. And then in terms of the park tours, I'm glad to hear, it sounds like it was a really informative experience. It sounds like Bill just brings so much context, history, information. And it sounds like everyone walks away with just like a much more detailed understanding and appreciation of these parks. Hearing about this secret trail through Sharon Park, now I kind of want to go check it out. I know that we have 2 more of these tours coming up. So I guess my final question would be, for the people who are on this tour, do you have any tips or suggestions for the next tours?
Make sure you bring a hat and some water, because I forgot to do both.
Yeah.
And Bill walks fast, so.
Walking shoes as well.
Okay, so walking shoes. Well, we'll probably need those at Bedwall, because that's a pretty large park. Would any other commissioner like to make a report on anything? Seeing none, I think we can call it a day. We can adjourn this meeting at 7:56 p.m. And again, thank you, staff and commissioners, for your time.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you, members of the public, for attending and for commenting. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Night.
night, everyone.